I bet that you all know that this is the county clerk election in the primary election this year. The election will actually be on June 2nd. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Reading area, I would like to welcome you to the Candidates Forum for the County Clerk. Thank you for joining us, all of you. My name is Susan Wilson and I'll be your moderator. I want to remind you that the responsibilities of the office for this office include maintaining official county records, including minutes of meetings and ordinances, overseeing elections, ensuring compliance with laws and regulations, managing vital records such as birth, death, and marriage certificates, processing and recording property deeds and other legal documents, providing public access to records and information as required by law, and administering oaths and maintaining official bonds for county officials. Now, it also includes, as Registrar of Voters, managing elections. And I bet that's why most of you are here. Put up your hand if that's why most of you are here. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So there are two candidates here with us today. I'm going to introduce Joanna Francescas. I'm going to call you Joanne. And Clint Curtis, and I'm going to call you Clint. Okay. There's only two candidates today, so the person who gets the most votes in the election on June 2nd will be the person that wins. This will not in any way go to the election in November. All right, some dates to remember. The last day to register to vote for this election is May 18th, but you have to remember that people can, that's if you want your ballot mailed to you. Otherwise, you can actually register right up to the day before the election, and you can vote. The county elections office will begin mailing ballots on May 4th. The ballot drop-off locations will open on May 5th. Vote by mail ballots can be returned by mail or at a drop-off location. I think there's 4 drop-off boxes right now, or at your elections office. Vote by mail ballots must be postmarked on or before Election Day, and everyone, including the Secretary of State's office, is saying, try to mail it 2 days before because we are having some issues with post offices and when they actually stamp your letter. So, I want to remind you that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. The League encourages informed and active citizen participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. So that's one of the things that we're doing here tonight. We believe in education and advocacy, talking about the issues with the people, but you need to keep in mind that we never endorse a candidate for an office. Even non-partisan, even partisan or non-partisan offices. Because it makes it difficult for us to do our job more clearly. We are really here so that you get information. Got it? Okay. Let me describe our format. As you came in, you were handed, I hope, 3x5 cards on which to write your questions. If you did not get a card or need more cards, raise your hand. A League member will provide you with one. When you finish writing your question, raise your hand. That's why I asked you to do this as much as possible beforehand. Please hold the card up and the League will pick it up. Keep in mind as you write your questions that we will address questions of general concern to the county clerk, and we will not ask a question that is directed to a specific candidate for a specific reason. I am asking the audience not to clap or shout in response to comments by the candidates. It just takes time. We can get more questions done without clapping and yelling and anything else. We do have limited time due to the library's new rules, and I'm hoping that we will be pretty much finished with our questions by somewhere between 6 and 6:10, and then we'll get you all out of the room really quickly, which won't be easy, and we will pile all the chairs up in stacks back here. We don't have to put them back in the room. Make sense? Okay. So the order of speaking has been determined. Joanna's coming first. Kurt, you're going second. Clint, you're going second. And then Clint will go answer the first question, and then Joanna, and we'll just go back and forth. So they'll have to do things two things in a row, like that. Each candidate will make an initial presentation of 3 minutes about their background, areas of concerns, and reasons for running for office. All questions will be asked by the moderators based on the questions collected from the audience. And then each candidate will have a closing statement of 3 minutes. Let me point out some of the members of the league who are helping me today. We have timers up here, and they are the ones that will keep track of the time. And then we have several people working on questions. They're mostly here in the front at this point in time. And with that, you all keep an eye on the timers, because I'm going to be stopped now when you get to the end of your time. So they will give you a 2-minute, or they'll give you a 30-second thing and a stop thing. Okay? Not a 1-minute thing. We have no 1-minute thing. Okay. So we'll hear the opening statements of up to 3 minutes from the candidates. Joanna, you are first.
We do the pledge.
If you would like to lead the pledge, you may lead the pledge for us.
Okay, I'd like that. Everybody stand up. Okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Clint.
Here you go. Testing.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for your hard work and your efforts into continuing education to our voters here in Shasta County. These forums that you put on are very valuable to our voters, and we appreciate that. So a leader that can build trust in elections is something that Shasta County voters deserve. My name is Joanna Francisca, and I'm running to be the next Shasta County clerk. I learned this work, system by system, year by year, law by law. I provided and participated in direct oversight of every part of the elections process, from petition ratification to the direct oversight and management of each countywide election. I spent my year gaining the knowledge and experience it takes to administer and run elections lawfully with stability, efficiency, and transparency. Election administration is hard work, and it requires a diverse skill set and knowledge of multiple disciplines, from detail-oriented data entry to knowing and understanding technical systems. It takes a lot to get this work done. A registrar of voters has to understand marketing and ballot design, because any small change of instructions could lead to voters being disenfranchised. It takes knowledge and understanding of ADA building laws and accommodation, the ability to recruit and retain hundreds of volunteers each election. These are just some of the skill sets that are involved with election administration. While we're learning and understanding those laws and those abilities, we're also trying our best as election officials to provide the best customer service possible to our voters and the people that we serve. We need secure elections that are built on transparency, that involve checks and balances and integrity. How do we build integrity in elections? Integrity elections is built, and it starts with competent leaders that know the job and understand the laws and procedures. It begins with well-trained staff. Shasta County voters should never have to question whether their ballot was safe, whether their vote will be counted, or whether the people following the elections or administering and running elections are following the law. That's why experience matters. That's why knowledge matters. And that's why I'm running to be your next county clerk.
Thank you. Clint,
Hi, everybody.
Get that right up to, you have to.
Can you hear me?
right up to your mouth.
I talk kind of soft, so. Hi, everybody. My name's Clint Curtis. I have been, before I was the county clerk, still can't hear me? Okay, any hear better? You have to kiss this thing, huh? Anyway. I'm your county clerk. Before that, I have been a computer programmer. I actually wrote the prototype for the electronic voting machines way back in 1999. After that, I was an attorney. I did election law. I did a whistleblower law, which means government corruption law. Studied at Barry University, Cambridge over in UK, and finally finished up at George down in Sacramento. So that's kind of where I came from. I've always been interested in elections since I wrote that program, because the program had a hack in it so people couldn't change it. So I testified before Congress and have been going around the country for 25 years trying to tell people how to protect their elections, how to make sure that the machines will not cheat you. And haven't been real successful getting a lot of that done. We got all the lip service, but not a lot of it done. When this opportunity came to Shasta County, I had other opportunities to do it, but Shasta County was special. Shasta County was special because the people here actually cared about elections. And they were heavily concerned about elections. It wasn't quite going very well. There were lawsuits, there were a lot of complaints. There was grand jury indictments. It was just crazy stuff, right? So I needed, in order for me to be comfortable to roll something out, I needed a system where the people cared, where the board cared, and where it was sufficiently bad that it would make it fairly easy to improve quickly. So I came here, I did it. We now have a system that's being touted all over the country to try and emulate us. I'll be going down this weekend, talking with a bunch of governor candidates, talking with candidates from the Attorney General's office, trying to get this spread out all across the country. I was on a conversation last night with a lot of the election integrity people that really care about this sort of thing, and they're all on board. So we've done an amazing thing. We've changed the system completely so that you can see every ballot before it ever goes into the machine. Got to trust that, right? And you can count it yourself. So I'm Clint Curtis, and we'll finish this up in a second. I don't want to hit that stop sign. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you both. And now, no clapping, please. Now we will move to entertaining questions for the candidates, and you will be first, Clint. And the first question is, if you are elected if you are elected in this election as the ROV County Clerk, will you uphold state laws? Will you prove to be nonpartisan, and will you be apolitical?
Well,
All three questions, you got 2 minutes.
that's a yes, no, no. Nonpartisan is kind of a lie we tell each other because everybody has an opinion. And so people who say they're nonpartisan, they're just not telling you which way they lean, right? They're just not. I have been a Democrat before. I'm a Republican now. The Democrats shifted on me. So, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm something different. I'm going to tell you what it is. Now, as far as upholding the laws, That's actually what we're doing now, because I actually understand the laws, so we know how to arrange the candidates on the ballot. We know how to follow the laws. There's all these lawsuits and everything. So yeah, I follow the laws, precisely. And that's why I could do what I did here in Shasta County, because we actually know the law and we can follow it to make it so it still works for the people, but it stays within the parameters of the state.
Thank you. Joanna?
Can you hear me okay back there? Thank you. It's really important to know that our California Constitution describes the county clerk's office as a nonpartisan office. We are not the office that creates the laws, we're the office that administers the laws. And I find it deep in my integrity that we must, as a county clerk and registrar of voters, be nonpartisan in our entire efforts as we serve the community of Shasta County. And that is my goal and my promise to you, that I will remain nonpartisan. Regardless of political affiliation, you as a voter should not know what mine is and not know my political opinions, because I am not in any type of ability or wanting voters to feel disenfranchised or questioning whether or not I will count their vote because I am a different political party than you are. And it's really important that we maintain that integrity as we do this work as elections officials here in Shasta County. It's also important to me that we follow state laws, regardless of what the state law is and how it needs to be done. It is our job to follow the law. As a nonpartisan officer in the state of California, I am not creating laws. I am not a legislator or a voter-nominated office. I am one that will follow the laws, and I will vow to the voters of Shasta County that in the efforts that I put forward, that we will follow all federal, state, and local election laws. It's also really important that voters trust elections, and to do that and to have the integrity that they deserve with elections, and know that they are secure, efficient, and the people doing the work are following the laws. It's very, very important to me that I will ensure staff will do that as well. They will not be sharing their political opinions and voicing their opinions about any measure or local candidate on the ballot. I have not asked for any endorsements from any local offices or officers that I will administer elections for.
Thank you. Keep the microphone. This is question number 2. Has there been any actual evidence that you know of elected fraud in Shasta County? And could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so it's really important to know that studies have shown that there's minimal fraud in elections. However, it's also really important that any one instance of fraud is not okay and not acceptable. When we talk about fraud in elections, there's checks and balances in the processes and procedures and the laws and regulations that we must follow. Whether it's chain of custody or verifying signatures prior to counting that vote by mail ballot, those checks and balances are in place to minimize fraud in elections. When I have came across for voters that may have attempted to vote twice, I did my best to report and document those findings with the local district attorney and the California Secretary of State. This is something that was caught because we have checks and balances in place and secure processes here in Shasta County.
Thank you. Lynn?
Well, there's a lot of evidence, actually. If you look through the system, and I do because I'm a data guy, right? So you look through the system. The one that is particularly important is the Kevin Cry recall race. Not only were there 3,000 more votes than people who could have voted, which is a problem. There's also, if you look at who voted, you can actually go into the history file and see when people voted. So after the beginning of the early vote, you'll see a 20% lead against Kevin Cry at 20%. Now I'm told that's happened everywhere, but this is a particular one I could look at because it's going to be pretty much a Democrat-Republican thing, just like Prop 50 was. If you look at the voters, you will not see this Democratic surge of 20%. In fact, at no time during that election ever did any time was the Republicans ever voting less than the Democrats. And it was a flat line all the way across, which is how most elections actually are. if you do elections at all, we've seen other countries, that's how it looks. So there's 20% and then a surge down to catch up. Basically, it was a front load. Now, at the end, if Kevin Cry got the Republicans, but he didn't get a single vote from any Democrat, any independent, any non-party, he still should have won by 511 votes, and he didn't. So looking at that, I invited the Department of Justice to come in and look at it. There were a lot of other issues, so we'll see if they come around and do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's me.
You get the first question. Please describe your hands-on experience in being a poll worker, a poll inspector, administering elections, or working as a county clerk.
Well, actually, I'm an attorney that sues poll workers, county clerks, all those people. So I actually have to know their job better than they do, because there's codes that have to be followed. So you actually have to see how they're supposed to do it, and then when you do it wrong, that's when the attorneys step in and get it done. So saying, yay, I was a poll worker, I now know the job, is kind of worthless. It's kind of why they made so many mistakes previously, because they didn't follow the law, they didn't read it, they just assumed that they knew what they were doing. And that's a sure way to get you in trouble. That's why I tell every new attorney, do not think you know what you're doing. Look up the law every time. If you do that, you'll do a much better job. So, like the county charter not being filed properly. That should have been something that they called the Secretary of State, because it doesn't get filed very often, right? Maybe once, ever. So you call the Secretary of State and you learn how to file it. They report that back. They didn't do that, so I had to clean that mess up after the fact. And that's because they didn't follow it. So hands-on is not necessarily a good way to do it. A good way to do it is actually read the law, understand it, and follow it.
Thank you. Joanna?
My experience working with poll workers and serving as elections official is deep-rooted in this community. My second position within this office, I became the poll worker coordinator. In 2012, I started that position in the middle of the primary election. And I took over that job with earnest efforts. And that's where I got to dig in and love this work. I spent hours and hours reading the code section, understanding what our procedures were, and implementing those procedures. During that election, it was the very first election that Kathy Darling was not able to do poll worker training. So I put forth the effort to create a new training program and train all the poll workers we had that election, which was more than 500 poll workers at that time. I took great efforts to build relationships with these volunteers, and some of them I still talk to on a day-to-day basis. I've also spent many hours after that as I promoted within this office to supervise that poll worker desk and help assist in poll worker training. Every time we've implemented a new process, whether it's a new voting system, which I have done twice, I've implemented 2 different voting systems, and even prepared a manual hand count plan as directed by the Board of Supervisors. I took that consideration at time with the laws and efforts of the state of California. I followed the laws, I read the laws. The laws are very fluid. Election laws change often. Many times, 10 to 15 laws change per year. And so it's a requirement that you get a new code book and read that every single election before doing that work. The truth is, and the fact of the matter is that we did follow laws in Shasta County. We were efficient and we produced secure elections throughout my tenure here in Shasta County.
Thank you. Hold on to the microphone, Joanna. The next question is, how do you control costs to run a fair, efficient, and cost-effective department?
So it's really important to control cost and understand the budget cycle for the elections. Elections are funded by federal or state monies. They're funded by our local taxpayers. When the fire department has to do an election for their district board members, that fire department has to pay their cost share for the election. We are consistently paying for elections with our local tax dollars, and it's really important that we understand the processes and procedures in place and utilize the best technology allowed through that's certified by the California state law, and to ensure that voters are processed efficiently and accurately so that we can get the job done. Controlling cost is something that can be done by understanding the voting systems, having a knowledge of it, and then training staff appropriately. In our most recent election, our local county clerk raised the cost of administrating an election by more than 35%. And he keeps asking for more and more money. And we want to make sure that that is because he's producing duplicative efforts to say he's producing a video of every single ballot, when the truth of the matter is he produced a video of less than 10% of the votes cast on election day. So really, it's really important that you listen to what's being told to you and then follow up and check and balance in that. Be an informed voter, understand the processes that he's put in place that are duplicative and wasting taxpayers' dollars. Also, with the increased costs that's happened, there's longer processing times, disenfranchised voters, and ultimately he's one of the last registrars in this county or this state to certify the results of the election, which should have been pretty quick in process, and we should have been done in Shasta County on the 22nd day, like we had been in the past, to help eliminate the extra help costs and ensure that voters have the results they need as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Clint?
She's a little confused, even though she's got it pre-written out here.
Yeah.
She's a little confused. First of all, everything gets videoed. Everything. You can't show it early. You cannot show it before the end of the polls closing, because you can't show the early vote. Because then people would know, well, I'm losing, I'm not going to vote, or I'm winning, or I need to. So you can't show that. So that simply gets held and then released at 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, you saw this dump of all these things being processed. We also do election day, so we process those as well. Those are the 10% I think she thought was done, but all she had to do was go through and watch the video, she would have known different. At the end, we process all of those extra ballots that come in, because you have late ballots as well. They come in, they are sorted the same, they are stacked the same, and they are processed on camera. You will see every ballot, except for those that have been marked incorrectly, on camera, and you can count it yourself. Absolutely yourself. So you can know that everything's good. Now, spending money on technology, we have a couple of products there that will probably not renew because they're duplicative. There is a 10X product that actually duplicates what's already in another product we use to do our voter list. $40,000, right? Haven't seen yet that it's actually that good. There's a lot of other things. There's additional waste from going on all these trips. There's KCO trips and trips down to Runback. So you have these little, I call them fluff. Yeah, we don't do fluff. We cut out all of those. We depend on the people so the people can see what's going on. If you depend on technology and you rely on it, you end up with the same problem that Riverside ended up with, where now there are 48,000 more votes than voters.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hold on to that microphone,
I missed the third.
because this is question number 5. How do you determine a person's suitability to be a poll worker?
Well, actually, there's very little we can do at the county. Surprisingly enough, basically anyone who applies under California law, unless there is a absolute reason why they can't do it, we have to hire them. And that's kind of the way it is. Now, there was a lot of discrimination against Republicans from her nonpartisan office that is massive. I've gone through the files, I see all the little nasty notes they left on these people, and if I was an attorney, I'd be filing suit tomorrow. I'm just telling you. So there's a lot of problems there. And nonpartisan doesn't mean you just don't do it. It means you actually make a system that no one can cheat. So if you show all your ballots, and it's all now recorded 24 hours a day, you will not be able to cheat because no one can insert anything. No one can come after the fact and say, oh, I'm going to change that total. I found a bunch of ballots. You can't find a bunch of ballots. You just recorded them. So they're done. And so that's the system we need here and across the country, maybe across the world, to make sure that elections can be trusted. Because I don't ask for blind trust. I believe trust and verify, and what Reagan meant when he said that was verify. He didn't mean trust, he was just trying to be polite to the Russians. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Joanna, same question.
So to determine a person's suitability and ability to be a poll worker, I think the joke I used to say was, if they can lead, they can be a poll worker. So we need every single poll worker we can get to do the work. And we asked our poll workers to do their work in a nonpartisan effort and to follow all laws, procedures. If a person is on ballot, there's a law that says they can't be a poll worker because it could be a conflict of interest. And it's very important that not only them or their family members also be a poll worker. So there's some very few exceptions right there for being a poll worker. Training poll workers and making sure poll workers understand the efforts it takes and it needs to happen to be nonpartisan is a truly valuable process. Also, the best poll workers that we get are those that can listen and follow directions. If somebody didn't listen or follow directions, or had some efforts in the polling place, we did at times have to tell them they can no longer be a poll worker. That was a direct reflection of their actions and their behavior. Just as I tell my children, if you're gonna make that decision, there's gonna be consequences. So anytime a poll worker that was under my purview was asked not to serve as a poll worker, or we had to counsel them, is because of actions that they took that no longer allowed them to be nonpartisan, or because they did not follow the direction. So I want to make that very clear. I am not discriminatory. In fact, I'm probably the complete opposite. I'm more empathetic than anyone you've probably ever met in your entire life, until I turn into Mama Bear, and I'm protecting people and protecting our voters. Because when I stand up to protect the voters, I can be strong and I can be bold, but I will not be overbearing. And there's a boundary. If you cross that boundary and you see that side of me, it's because of the choices that you made and the reflection that you have on your actions. And I want to make that very clear. Our poll workers are valuable and they deserve, and we need poll workers. So if you have the ability, be a poll worker.
Thank you. So we're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to ask, how many of you in the audience have been poll workers? Isn't that grand? Isn't that grand? We should be pretty proud of this group.
How about being denied being a poll worker?
Yeah. I
What?
was first
How
denied.
about being denied being a poll worker?
That's not something I'm going to do. I just wanted to know how many people had been.
How many people have been poll workers? Okay, next question. First person. This is question number 6, by the way. What will you do to educate the voters of Shasta County?
So it's really important that voters understand how they can cast their ballot and what they need to do to ensure their voice is heard throughout the election process. However, I think it's more important for people to understand voters often don't care until the very last minute. We are last minute voters in this country. And so to me, a solid voter education plan helps the voter understand what changes were made. And we will do that under my purview by providing information to the poll workers or the voters consistently. Under and on our website, we will reach out and do social media posts, but we also have to make sure that we're meeting our needs and not overreaching and overspending on our budget throughout the cycle. So we will make every single effort to train and educate voters and then tell them to pass on that word. As frugal as possible and as efficient as possible.
Thank you. Clint?
I think we agree on something. That is shocking, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of times voters don't care till the last day. But I'm going to take a few seconds here to educate the voters so that if you are voting at the polls, this is very important. Make sure you bring your envelope with you. It is the only item that actually tells me you haven't voted already. So, because if you voted already, you won't have the envelope to hand to them. So when you surrender that envelope, you can go right to the polls. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to do a call center. It's very important to know, I have a person, they have not voted, and those are the two things you need to know. Who they are, so you can do it on the roster, either the active or the supplemental. And have they voted? That envelope tells you whether you voted. If you have not voted and you got stuck in line last time, that is unnecessary. You can simply vote a provisional, the little pink ones, and we will treat it like a mail-in. You will get it, we will check the signatures, we will make sure you're a voter, and you get to go through, it takes you 2 seconds. Before that, they were kind of pushing the call center. The call center got overwhelmed, and it slows everything down. You don't want to have to call the call center unless you just have to. If you really need to have your ballot counted on election night, and you didn't bring your envelope, you have to stand at the call center. Otherwise, it's all treated as a mail-in. And, you know, mail-ins aren't bad, but they do take longer to process. Got a signature verify them, got to check everything, and you're good to go.
Thank you. So you're first with the next question. How important is it to follow state election laws?
It is vital, which was probably one of the big problems with my predecessor. You know, they
Please, ladies and gentlemen.
They actually blew a 1970s law. She talks about, you know, there's new laws and you have to stay up on them. Well, you do. But the actual order of candidates on the ballot is from a law in the 1970s that the Secretary of State makes that draw. You don't get to draw whatever you want. It's pretty clear. They make the draw, and that's what you follow. In this last election, we had multiple draws, because we had the draw for most of the ballot, and then there's a CD1 ballot that's on the same ballot. That one has to have a separate draw. But the Secretary of State not only tells you they're having the draw, they tell you when they're having the draw, in case you want to show up. I did the last time on the first and not the second. And then they give you how they should be organized. So they tell you the alphabet. They went over the top this time and actually told me what CD1 order was in. It's impossible to blow that, right? I mean, all you gotta do is read your email from the Secretary of State and you'll see that. So they missed that law. There's a bunch of others. But you gotta follow them and you gotta read them. And you gotta read them fresh every time because the legislature is always out there tweaking them. So a tweak might look like it's gonna be nothing, but one word can change an entire thing. And you got to read the whole thing. A lot of people read like the first sentence and they'll stop. That's not how you read law. You've got to read the whole paragraph to know if they're going to change that first sentence, because they do that all the time.
Thank you. Joanna.
So it is very important that you follow election law, including the time and place and manner of the alpha draw, which you did not do correctly this election. The election law is very specific that you do the local alpha draw on the 83rd day at 11 a.m., 10 a.m., one of those 2 times. And in fact, you did not do that for a week later because you were in Sacramento focused on the state alpha draw. It's very important that when you listen to him talk and understand that he has lived in California 11 months, he is not a local resident, he hasn't understood state law and California law. So very important that when you look through the laws and understand that, you follow the state and federal laws. In fact, I will take ownership and accountability that I did not train my staff appropriately on the difference between a state and local alpha draw. I did that in court, and I take ownership of that. The judge dismissed the case, and it did not have an impact on the results of that election. And I want to make that very clear. That was decided in court and appealed as well. So please keep that in mind. The following election laws and understanding election laws is very important because it can be complicated and it can be confusing. How the voter information card is created, how local measures are placed on the ballot, how and when to do a random sample versus a full check. Those are all election laws and regulations that must be followed. Even how to breathe on election day, it seems like the election code is very specific on what happens on election day. And I really wanted to encourage you to read that as you complete poll worker training. Because right now, the stuff and processes he's put in play may or may not follow election laws. So I'll let him determine that because he is a Florida lawyer and he has the effort to do that. But please take in consideration that we must follow all laws in California, whether state or federal laws.
Thank you. Joanna, you're first on the next question. Should an ROV in any California county support or promote any candidate, measure, or proposition? Yes or no, and why?
I, as a nonpartisan candidate for the Shasta County Board of Registered Voters, think it's really important to not support or oppose any type of measure on the ballot. Whether or not you agree with the measure is not relevant. Your job is to count ballots and follow those ministerial laws and make sure the voters have their voice heard. In fact, I tried to touch base on this earlier. I have not sought any endorsements from any local or state officials that I might have to administer an election for. I've reached out to them and talked to them and asked for their support, but I have not asked for an endorsement. So please keep that in mind. Endorsing candidates and supporting measures is not something that I, as my integrity would have, think is appropriate for Shasta County Registrar of Voters to take.
Thank you. Clint?
New York lawyer, federal, not Florida. Anyway, no, you can't endorse a measure. I think that's mainly directed to the Measure B, which I had to kind of champion to get it on the ballot. That's not supporting it. That's getting people who had gathered all of the necessary requirements and had actually qualified to be on the ballot to be able to go to the voters. Because there was a suit out there that was trying to override the voters' will and simply saying, no, I'm smarter than all of you. I'm going to keep it off the ballot. That never bodes well for me. It doesn't matter if I love it or if I hate it. You know. In fact, if I hate it, I fight just as hard, maybe harder, because then it'd be harder to do. But so that's what that one is for. I will always fight for every measure that qualifies, that gets the right number of signatures, and is allowed to go on the ballot, to fight and make that on the ballot. Now, as far as endorsements, I am endorsed by the Central Committee. I am endorsed by the Republican Assembly. You know, I mean, endorsed by the American Independents. I don't have a problem with that because the election you see now, I cannot tinker with. I actually not only have it so you can see everything, I take a polygraph at the end of each election to let people know that I haven't tinkered with anything. And I would challenge her to do the same.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is actually question number 9. We're moving right along here. What's an appropriate number? Currently, there are 4 drop boxes.
Can you ask people to stop making comments?
Would people would stop making comments? I mean, they're happening several places, but it makes it very difficult for all of us. So currently, there are 4 drop boxes. What's an appropriate number of drop boxes for ballots? And how should those in extremely remote and rural areas vote without accessible drop boxes?
Well, 3 and 5/11 drop boxes are required. Now, I can't get a 5/11 drop box, so I have the 4th one. But if you want to vote, the drop boxes are the least secured way because no one guards them, right? If you mess with mail in a mailbox, you will go to jail. It's a federal crime. If you mess with a drop box, no one really enforces anything because no one really sees anything. They don't follow that. Now, as far as that, there was a big problem with chain of custody on the drop boxes before, because the drop boxes, they go on this route all over the country and bring it back. Now the drop boxes, every person, 2 people, go directly to the drop box and directly back. No stopping for lunch, no going home, no shopping. It's direct. And they hand it off to 2 different people who actually count the drop box and make sure it's right. And I physically go out and watch them when they do this, so I can check on them randomly. And that's another reason for the lie detector, because that way I can show that they are being enforced. So essentially that's how I do that. I wouldn't add another drop box if they need to vote. All of the drop boxes were right next to the mailboxes, which was crazy anyway. But if you're voting on election day and you put it all off and it's the last day, if you go to the post office, they will stamp it just like tax day. If you're late for that, you can drop it off at any of the polling stations, all 50 some of them. Drop off every polling place. It doesn't have to be yours, and it's there too. So you don't need a drop box. We have 60 of those as opposed to 10 drop boxes. So I would not add a single one.
Thank you, Joanna.
So to determine the number of appropriate drop boxes in Shasta County, it really is based on the voters' behavior. Kathy Darling Allen was one of the very first people that implemented drop boxes in the state of California. In 2012, we implemented our first drop boxes before the laws were in place that govern them, and we allowed voters to drop their ballots off the drop box. We did this because that was the same time that USPS was changing where the distribution center was. Instead of ballots going directly one day to the Reading post office to our office and us getting them back in one day, that's when they started taking that round trip to Sacramento and back. So the minimum amount of time it takes ballots to get placed in the mail back to our office is 2 days. The longer it takes us to get the ballots back, the longer it takes us to count the ballots. So having drop boxes is a very efficient, safe, and secure way for voters to deliver their ballots. When we have drivers pick up the ballots, not only were they going around and picking up ballots, towards the end of the election and closer to election day, they're actually delivering ballots to voters with disabilities that did not have access to a car to pick up and come get a second ballot, or they were picking up the ballots from those voters with disabilities. They didn't stop to go shopping. They didn't stop to eat lunch because that's a requirement and the right thing to have them do. They didn't stop to go to the bathroom. Those were all rights that those workers have as they do their work here in Shasta County. I want to make it very clear and important that half-truths are still lies. When you're talking about things that you assume happened because you heard hearsay and you did not live here and observe what was actually happening, those are lies. So when you take your polygraph test, please make sure you're aware of those half-truths are still lies. Okay? Our drop boxes are secure. We need to make data-driven decisions and have drop boxes that are accessible to our most rural voters. Taking all the drop boxes from District 3 is not appropriate. That's our most rural area, and the longer it takes for us to get mail.
Thank you. This next one is a sort of a complicated one, and I know that many of you question state and federal laws, and you know that some of the laws in an election are from the state, and some of them are federal, right? So we have to pay attention to both, and we have to sort them out as appropriate for each election. So, keeping that in mind, where you list candidates, where would you start with the state and federal laws as far as amendments? I think you're first. You're first.
Joanna.
Joanna's first.
I'm first? Okay. So as far as administering elections, my focus is on getting the work done. Changing state and federal law is not something that I'm out there saying, hey, we need to do this. In the past, my experience has been with state law to recommend changes based on laws that were recently passed and things we need to update. For example, in 2020, when we were required by state law to issue every voter a ballot, even though we had polling places on, the legislatures didn't change the ability and the number that we were required to send ballots to the polling place. We're still required to send an enormous amount of ballots, even though all voters were receiving the ballot mail and voting by mail. And so I made a suggestion and request that our CA CEO support an amendment to the law that allows voters, instead of coming in and getting a new ballot, to actually surrender it and get a replacement ballot. I wanted the law changed so voters can take their vote by mail ballot into the polling place and scan it in to the tabulator. So that's one instance where we requested change in state law and where it was effective. As far as federal law, I'm going to leave that up to our legislation. And if voters have concerns about federal laws that we're following, I'm going to send them to whoever replaces Doug Malfa to make that change. So,
Thank you. Clint?
I don't change law, I just read it and follow it. It's not my job to lobby it. You know, I would have changed that because I would have asked. I wouldn't have, when the county wanted to get rid of their voting machines, I wouldn't have gone down to Sacramento and got them to change the law so they couldn't. That's not what I do. That's never what I do. I follow the law. That's enough for that one. Let's go back to the post office before people get scared not to use it. On the post office, I talk to them. They do not, on election day, send them down to Sacramento. They keep them there, they stamp them, and they let us pick them up right there at the post office. They're never going to send them down for a 2-day wait. It's been that way last year as well. You know, I talked to them. and they're ready to go. So you can use the post office, it's not a problem. They are a very safe and trusted organization, and if you need to drop off your ballot at the post office, it's a perfectly good place to do it. They are not going to send it anywhere, they're going to box it for us individually, and we go in on election night and pick them up. In fact, on our routes, we pick them up twice a day before that, but we also pick them up at the close of business day.
Thank you. Joanna? Any,
So here's one.
I'm sorry. So the last question that I have here is, how will you try to lower the temperature locally when it comes to election rhetoric?
I have no
You get to
idea.
go first.
I have no idea. We didn't have any problems at the office. Beforehand, they had like a spiked gate going down the middle of the room, and they had like 6 security guards, and everyone was fighting and yelling with each other. On election night, we took down that wall, we opened it up, we put in a lobby where they can see everything, and we served pizza and cookies. And everybody sat there, and they were perfectly fine, Democrats and Republicans alike, talking to each other, because they could see everything. They saw every process, they saw every ballot. So that lowered the temperature then. Since then, you know, you get people saying there's something going on, but there can't be anything going on because you can see everything. You don't have to trust me. In fact, you should never trust anyone. This is your election. This is the most important thing any citizen has. This changes everything. And if you think you need to trust a single person, you're in a bad shape, because that kind of makes it so they can cheat things, right? So take that polygraph, make it visual to
Quiet,
everybody.
please.
Make it visual to everybody. That's what you need to do. If you do that, eventually people will understand that they can come see everything they want, and they will know everything that's going on. So there's nothing to really fight over.
Thank you. Joanna?
I really think it's important that us as a community stand together and remember that together we are what makes our local elections secure. We are the people in this community that stand up. Whether you're a voter who's ensuring that your voter record is accurate, or making sure that your neighbors are voting and educated and have the information they need to vote on election day. Or you're an elections official that's showing up to be a poll worker at 6 o'clock in that morning and working all day long with very little pay to serve our community. These are the heartbeat of our election, our community working together to make sure that our elections are strong are what creates secure elections. We need everybody. And my part of that will be to determine the competent leader that you all need. I will bring calmness and chaos. In the past, we have worked hard to ensure there are secure elections that are transparent. Our local office right now, you heard him talk about the gate. That gate was actually only extended by 4 feet. It was there the entire time. Instead of taking it down and moving it upstairs like you did, we kept it there so that we had a secure place for voters to vote and keep the upstairs voting system secure. That was not for observers, that was not for to keep anybody out, that was strictly to keep our voting system and our IT staff secure and our IT closet secure. I worked with multiple people and it was recommended for us to get that work done. I saved county dollars by doing that as well. I want to make sure that we protect all voters here in Shasta County. Whether you're loud and vocal and stand up every Tuesday at the board meeting, or whether you are quiet and are working hard to feed your family, maybe working 7 days a week just to put food on the table. I want our voters to make sure that they feel secure.
Okay. So,
My turn?
I think you answered that one, didn't you? Yeah. So if you give the microphone back to Joanna, she is going to close.
No, I started.
I, Oh, you started opening, so it is your turn. I'm sorry, I'm not
I
thinking
could
about
be
it.
wrong, you know.
No, it's kind of nice to have someone that knows everything, sitting right there next to me. That was a good giggle.
I'm just barely paying attention, so I might have caught it, right?
Yeah. So, we're pretty much to 6 o'clock and we need to get out of here. But I think that we had some really good questions and some of the things that we wanted were heard. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to the job of the county clerk at all, but we'll presume that that's going to go smoothly. So 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Thanks. Yeah, the county clerk job does go fairly smoothly, so I wanted to address it.
Keep that microphone up near your mouth.
County clerk job does go fairly smoothly. Everything is pretty organized. We're basically just, throwing out paper and filing it in the right area, right? So it's fairly smooth. It doesn't change all the time. Like election law changes every cycle. There's probably 500 bills before the legislature right now that are sitting there waiting to change things. So the election is the hard job, even though it's called the county clerk race. My name is Clint Curtis. You've already seen what I can do. You've already seen my elections. And if you haven't, come down to Market, where it's no longer spike fences in the middle of the room. There's now flags and everything's red, white, and blue. And there's a nice place to sit down. And there's monitors across the whole wall and across the other side wall too, where you can see every process every time. There's not a ballot that moves. I've improved all of the chain of custody. Before they were just carrying ballots all over the place, right? Not bagged, not boxed, not in seals. And when they did do it, they threw them into this blue container and would roll it up the stairs and never locked it up. So they put in a locked room, but there are over 500 entries where that room was entered, and there's no name on who did it on the log. So it's either something's wrong, right? Deleted, corrupted, something's wrong. Now, a ballot does not move 3 feet before it's in a transparent container that has a seal on it. Kind of like when you go to Walmart and try and buy deodorant now, right? It's that little box for her to do that. So that's how it is. Nothing moves in that place unless it's under camera, 24 hours a day, there's 4 of them. All the time, you can see everything. No one's sneaking anything in. And we're thinking about adding another one between the closing and starting hours that will give it an alert, because most people don't want to sit and watch a 24-hour camera. So it gives that an alert. It will actually tell if anybody's in there, and I want that to be plugged in directly to our website, which will tell the entire public, hey, someone went in there at 2 o'clock in the morning. Check the video, right? And that will be available to everyone. Clint Curtis, vote for me for county clerk. We will be able to not only keep this here, we will be able to spread this everywhere. And that will knock out all the problems about machines. That should knock out all of the conversations, and you won't have to worry about elections anymore, because you can trust you, because that's the one that really matters.
Thank you. Quiet, please. Joanna?
Tonight we touch base on just a few items with election administration. I could probably go on and on for hours about what it takes to get this job done. And you will all be bored to tears. Kind of similar to learning how my son plays video games and what, I don't know if you have those kids that also do that, and you're listening to them go on and on and on about Minecraft, and you're like, this is way over my head. But I can do that with election administration very, very easily. But I do want you guys to remember as you leave today to be educated, to understand, look at the process. There's many half-truths, which to me are lies told about me today, that we can talk about later. But Mr. Curtis, one of the claims he said locally is that 511 votes is what Kevin Christ spreadsheet did. When in fact, during the certification process of that contest, we did a hand count of almost every single contest in that ballot, every single ballot in that contest, to ensure that those results were accurate. And the results are what they were, because in California, we voted on paper ballots since 2008. where you hand mark your own paper ballot. I want to make sure people understand that California has some of the stringent rules when it comes to voting systems and operations, because that helps elections be secure and allows for more efficient checks and balances when it comes to ensuring our votes were accurately counted. The truth is we all want fair, accurate, and trusted elections. They are the foundation of our democracy and this constitutional republic. Elections belong to the voters. It does not belong to politicians, not to parties, not to special interests, and this is done to, I'm serving to be your next county clerk or one so I can protect this foundation and stand with you together, whether or not you agree with me theologically or politically. I want you to stand with me because our democracy and this constitutional republic is that important. When I was passed over by the Board of Supervisors, I heard a member of the board say, "This is bigger than Shasta County. We need to be an example to the country." And I say, let's do that. Let's stand together for trusted, fair, and secure elections that are ran by a local person that cares about this community. I never thought I would ever be a politician. I started this work in 2008 because of needing a job, and I found a passion for this work and a joy in serving this community. I am still here because I love this community, and I want to continue to live in this community and continue to serve you. I stand for you all, regardless of political affiliation. So stand with me, help volunteer for the election, spread the word. We need you guys to have this election be secure. We need voters to vote. When the majority...
Thank you.
Joanna will be on Poke the Hornet's Nest, 9 o'clock
Thanks a lot.
Sunday.
Okay, so you will be able to watch this all over again. KRCR and Mike will have something on it as well. I have a couple comments before you go. We do have two forums coming up. One is the California Assembly. Heather Hadwick currently owns that position, as you know, but we have 3 candidates who will be coming to that. And the second one is, I think that we're going to do one on Measure B. Now, when I talk about Measure B right now, I want to tell you, this is not a pros and cons. We're not going to be for it. We're not going to be against it. We are going to be nonpartisan, and we want to make sure that people have read Measure B and know what's in Measure B. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so you can look for that. I do. California Assembly, Riverfront Theater. You all know where the Riverfront Theater is up on California Street. It will be in the theater there at 5 o'clock on May 1. Yes. And Measure B, if we do it, it's an educational forum, and it will be at 3 o'clock on May 2nd at the Riverfront Playhouse, because we thought we would use the big theater for those who are interested in talking about it. And on that note, I want to say thank you to these 2 candidates who worked so hard. And I would really like to thank all of you for being here and taking advantage of this opportunity. So skimble out of here as fast as you can. Thank you.